Hello friends, we come to the last lecture on Aravind Adiga's The White Tiger. We call it further analysis. As we have certain topics like theme, form, language, human relationships, reflections on life, all of them we will see here, and then provide two perspectives. One is comparative perspective, another is a developmental perspective. We have a specific approach to the white tiger. I suppose you will appreciate the value of this kind of reading. Finally, we will see some takeaways. Let us see the objectives now. There are many objectives because we have put all kinds of ideas together in this presentation. The first is to discuss the thematic contrast in the white tiger. The second is to examine the epistolary form of the novel. The third is to understand the beast fable framework in the novel, which we referred to in our presentation on literary devices. To investigate the forms within the form of the novel. The novel is a form, but there are many different kinds of forms which have been used by the novelist in the novel. Then to focus on human relationships and reflections on life. I believe this one will be very interesting for you. The comparative perspective will be very interesting for you. To compare Ben Jonson's drama Volpone, Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, Richard Wright's novel Native Son, and again Girish Karnad's play Tughlaq with Aravind Adiga's novel The White Tiger. We have some interesting ideas from this kind of comparison. To offer a developmental perspective on the novel, and finally we will consider certain takeaways from the novel. Let us start with the thematic contrast. We have many kinds of contrasts. Some of them are India of light and India of darkness. There are two different kinds of Indias. We also have two different kinds of people, men with big bellies and men with small bellies, that is the rich and the poor. We also have people who eat others and also people who are eaten up, that is the rich and the poor. We also have the case of North India and South India, village and city, two kinds of economic or social political organization like capitalism and socialism. We have the comparisons of India with China and also America. We have the writer and reader as well. Writer Aravind Adiga, he tells a story through Balram, who writes about his own life. So we as readers engage with both the character and the novelist. We also have a case of a contrast between the novel and also journalism, because Aravind Adiga started off his life as a journalist. So some of the journalistic techniques he has brought into the novel, and so we have the contrast between the novel and also journalism. We have some exceptional individuals as well as ordinary people. Such a contrast also we can see here. The whole title of the novel deals with an exceptional individual, Balram Halwai, that is the white tiger, and all other people are ordinary people. Let us look into the form of the novel now. The White Tiger is called a novel. It is considered to be a realistic novel, unlike many other different kinds of experimental novels that we have in modernism and postmodernism. The novel has been written in the form of 7 unsent unread letters or emails, written over 6 nights and 2 mornings. This set of emails has been written by a half-baked Indian to various readers like us, although the original imaginary reader is the Chinese premier. There is a movement from a formal tone to an informal tone at the end of the novel. That is why in the beginning we have His Excellency Wen Jiabo. At the end of the novel, simply Balram addresses the Chinese premier as Wen. Also we have the white tiger, a thinking man at the beginning, but finally we have the whole name being changed from Munna to Balram to Ashok Sharma. Actually Balram Halwai impersonates his own master in so many ways, like stealing his money, stealing his identity as well. We have the first person narrative through the mouth of Balram Halwai, but then the whole novel has this omniscient narration. occasionally we find that the author also intrudes into the novel. It is a satire and a pure entertainer. When you read it, you enjoy it. Despite all the ethical issues in the novel, you feel happy to read it. Just it is an entertainer. That is why the Man Booker Award was given to him. This novel has a journalistic and cinematic eye, that is narration. That is why it is very interesting. It keeps you engaging. It is a novel with a pleasing, instructive and cathartic effect on the reader. Let us now spend some time on the beast fable framework that we wanted to discuss with reference to this novel. A beast fable is a story of animal characters with a moral. We have human characters in the novel, but then we have some animal names for them. Normally such a beast fable we will find in Aesop's fables. We also have such a beast fable framework in Ben Jonson's play Volpone. We will look at Volpone later when we give the comparative perspective. So, let us see the animals and also the human characters. The white tiger is Balram Halwai, the lamb is Ashok Sharma, the mongoose is Mukesh Sir, that is Ashok's elder brother, the stork is Thakur Ramdev, who is the father of Ashok and Mukesh. The wild boar is the brother of Thakur Ramdev, that is Ashok's uncle. We have the raven who is a landlord, his name is not given. Similarly, the buffalo's name is also not given, though it is mentioned as a landlord. The sly fox has a reference to grandmother Kusum. Then in general we have dogs and donkeys for most of the drivers and working class people throughout the novel. So, put together the entire novel makes a very interesting beast fable with a moral. That moral is live ethically, treat fellow beings well, otherwise there will be some danger. We have some forms within the form. Remember, this is a novel and it has many kinds of techniques, ways of presentation. So, we have book titles and caps in the novel. Some books are mentioned. Lessons for young boys from the life of Mahatma Gandhi. We have a police poster, we looked at it in another presentation. We have the website address. We have some matrimonial and business advertisements in newspapers, these are quoted. We have the signboard at the hospital, at the wine shop, and Yahoo has some presence in this novel. Remember, Yahoo became popular in the 2000s. We have certain price lists, political slogans, magazine covers, and also affidavit. The affidavit is presented to us in the novel and it is read to Balram. Let us see some more forms that we have in the novel. We have some letters from the granny, we also have some letter from Balram. We have certain public advertisements for drivers. We have a checklist and also some table. Certain listings are there like train destinations and old textbooks. We have a fortune telling chit from a weighing machine. We have some poetry examples. Radio news bulletins are mentioned. Again, we have some wall painting and also posters. So, different kinds of forms of writing or communication are presented to us within the novel. Let us see the language of the novel. Please remember, it is a whole story, it is a narration, but there is something to do with English language. We have a quotation from the novel. Neither you nor I can speak English, that is, neither Balram nor Wen Jiabo can speak English. One is Indian, another is Chinese. But there are some things that can be said only in English. That is where English is useful as a language of communication. In addition to narrations, we have lot of descriptions of places and people. We also have some dialogues between characters. In addition to narration, descriptions and dialogues, we have public announcements, radio news and political slogans as well. Some examples for Indian English we have here on this slide. Sidekick is a term that refers to a man of less importance, the politician and his sidekicks. always somebody goes along with the politician. There are some other examples like Namaste, Balram is considered to be the sidekick of the god Krishna. We have Pan, Ghat, Dal, Kaki. We also have gulab jamuns, laddus and namas. Further, we have potato vada, mandala and also sadhu in the novel. So, these words are presented to us in the novel now and then, here and there. Let us see the human relationships in the novel. It is a long novel, it has many characters, and so the protagonist has some kind of relationship with many other characters. So, we have Balram on the one hand and many other characters like Wen Jiabo, that is a Chinese premier, Balram and Ashok Sharma, Balram and Pinky Madam, Balram and Granny Kusum, that is the grandmother of Balram. Balram is also contrasted with his mother, his father and his brother Kishan. Balram feels for his mother who died, he saw it, he saw the cremation of his own mother. We have Balram in relation to Vijay and the great socialist. Vijay is a village boy from Lakshmangarh, but the great socialist is not from the village, but when Balram goes to Delhi, he meets both of them, actually he drives them once. Balram has an intimate relationship with Vitiligo Lips, who is also a driver who guides Balram in Delhi. Then Balram is able to have some kind of thoughts about India, China and America as countries, which is a good country, which is a better country to live, or he has some comments on various countries. Balram is also related to his own village and Dhanbad, Delhi, Bangalore. These are the places that he visits. Balram is also related to the booksellers in Delhi, even those poets who have given some wisdom, the Muslim poets who have given some wisdom, Balram talks about. There are certain reflections on life, we have all of them in the form of questions. These are very interesting questions for all of us. How does a man or a woman become rich in India? How does a man cross his or her social barriers? We have many barriers, how do we cross them? How does a man break out of the rooster coop? That is a very important question in the whole novel. How do politicians run one of the largest democratic countries in the world? Again, this is another important question. How has globalization affected and changed India? Balram, as a protagonist of this novel, has come into picture precisely because of this globalization. That is why this novel is also called a globalization novel, or a novel which deals with the impact of globalization on individuals in developing countries. How does foreign educated and returned youth live in India? Ashok is a shining example. Many people who go to the foreign countries return to India after this globalization, they can do their business, but how do they live here? How do the upper class and middle class people evade tax? This is a problem in our country. How does corruption operate in India? Corruption is a major factor affecting the growth of India, everyone knows it. How does the electoral system work in India? Only during the elections such things are reported. Now we have another important question for us. How can a man or a woman choose to live his life on his own terms? If a man wants to be a good person, is he allowed to live as a good person in our country? So there is a problem. That is why Balram says he has a choice to be a good man in Bangalore. That is why when his driver Asif kills a cyclist, he visits the victim's house and offers to give some 25,000 rupees. Unlike his master Ashok and the Stark and Mukesh, they escaped from the scene and they were preparing to send the servant, the driver, to jail. But in this case, Balram applies some sense of dharma to himself. I want to be a better human being, better than my masters. And he chooses to live as a good man in Bangalore, but then he has to live with evil minded people or corrupt people like the police commissioner. He can choose to be good, but he can't change others. We have certain comparative perspectives. We have 4 comparisons, one with Ben Jonson's play Walpole on the theme of greed and lust, another with Charles Dickens's novel Great Expectations where we have social ambition, then Richard Wright's Native Son where we have class struggle, racial struggle, then finally we have a comparative perspective with Adiga's novel from Girish Karnad's play Tughlaq. We have already done that as part of our course. So you can easily see the connection between Aziz and Balram. Balram kills his master and becomes successful. In the case of Aziz, he kills a saint or supposed to be a saint, and he becomes a saint, impersonates a saint and reaches the palace to get a government post. So how do rogues, devils succeed in life? We have some examples. Let us first look at Ben Jonson and Aravind Adiga. Walpole is the Elizabethan play, a well known play, satirical play. It actually satirizes the greed and lust of human beings. We have the relationship between master and slave. The master is Walpole and the slave is Mosca. We also have how old people live and how young people live. We also see the contrast between rich people and poor people. Lots of cunning and scheming we find in the case of Walpole and the legacy hunters. We have the slave Mosca, who is more intelligent than his master and therefore finally he succeeds. Mosca is a mediator and collaborator, and we have such a scenario in the White Tiger as well. We have greed and lust in the novel The White Tiger from this village Lakshman Gar. We also have it in Delhi, probably we have it in Bangalore as well. We have the master and the slave in the case of the Stark and Balram. We also have different kinds of people like old people, adults and young people. Even the young people are corrupted by the masters. We have the rich and the poor people and the relationship between the two, the rich exploiting the poor, but the poor adapting themselves using similar cunning and scheming of the rich and living their own life. We have Ashok, the antagonist of the novel, who is contrasted with the politicians. The driver Balram, not so much educated, from the village, but he outwits his master Ashok. Ashok actually plans to change the driver upon the suggestion of Uma, his former lover, but then before that happens, Balram becomes alert and drives the master and the corrupt people, at least his master, to death. Let us see the comparison between Charles Dickens and Aravind Adiga. Charles Dickens is a social novelist known for many novels like Oliver Twist, David Copperfield, Bleak House and Hard Times. We also have another great novel, Great Expectations. The protagonist of the novel is Pip. It is actually a satire on the English society. Actually, the novels of Charles Dickens deal with environmental degradation, and finally we have some sense of redemption and reformation in the society, in the English society, by the novels of Dickens, which created some furor in English society. Aravind Adiga is a novelist of social vision just like Charles Dickens. He often refers to Charles Dickens as an influence on him. Adiga is known for many novels like The White Tiger, Last Man in Tower, Selection Day, Amnesty and also the short story collection Between the Assassinations. Aravind Adiga also writes satires on the Indian society. He deals with the exploitation of children and the marginalized people in the country. He also refers to certain ecological disasters. When it comes to his novel Last Man in Tower, we have such planning or master planning in Bombay which have catastrophic effects on the city and the people. Adiga also attempted to create awareness about equality and attainment of real equality among his people. When you read the novel about Balram, you will understand that there are people like Balram who aspire for equality, who aspire to become somewhat rich in their own life. They want to live their life with dignity, as his own father Vikram Halwai said. Now we come to the comparison between Richard Wright, the American novelist, and Aravind Adiga, the Indian novelist, who has some kind of American experience as well. Richard Wright is known for his well known novel Native Son. This novel deals with the protagonist Bigger Thomas. Bigger Thomas suffers because of the racial and class prejudices. We have the contrast between black America and white America in the Native Son. Bigger Thomas suffers from poverty and also despair. He accidentally kills his own master's daughter called Mary. He justifies the murder and he does not have any sense of remorse. But when the case is presented, he is executed for his crime in America. When we come to Aravind Adiga's novel The White Tiger, we find Balram Halwai suffers from the problems of caste and class. He is unable to find a job and his caste and class and family history is verified by the masters. This novel deals with two kinds of India, light and dark India, like Native Son, which deals with black America and white America. Aravind Adiga also deals with the frustration and humiliations suffered by the poor people. In the case of Balram Halwai, we have a planned killing of the master and also a huge robbery. That means something like huge cache of money he takes away with him. But he does not feel bad about this murder because there are many government officials, they do such misdeeds very regularly in India. That is how he justifies his own action. But once he becomes an entrepreneur in Bangalore, he succeeds and he wants to be a good man. To live a good life, he has to do something wrong, that is the murder of his own master. Now let us come to the final comparison between Girish Karnad and Aravind Adiga. We have to remember that Girish Karnad has written the play Tughlaq and Aravind Adiga has written the novel The White Tiger. We have an ambitious king and also an ambitious citizen, that is Tughlaq and Aziz. In the case of Aravind Adiga, we have Ashok Sharma and Balram. These two are contrasted. In the novel also we have ambitious citizenry. The rich people want to become richer by evading tax and handling tax cases, and poor people also want to become rich. Aziz is a brilliant citizen who outwits a brilliant king. In contrast, Balram Halwai, who is a poor man who learns driving to get a job and a uniform to begin with. Aziz wins a case against a king, whereas Balram defeats another driver, he manipulates. Aziz gets an officer post for winning the case against a king. In the case of Balram Halwai, he cheats his master. He learns to live like his master and he wants to escape from the rooster coop. And finally, Balram Halwai kills his master to become a successful and remember, a nation building entrepreneur. In the case of Aziz, we find that all kinds of atrocities he indulges in. Aziz gets an officer post, he mints fake currencies, he buys land in Doab, in the famine affected Doab. He also kills masquerades a saint and leads a prayer for the nation in front of the king. And at the end, Aziz becomes the king's ally. Whereas in the case of Balram Halwai, we find that he joins the middle class. Probably he will become part of the upper class when he starts his real estate business and starts establishing his educational enterprise or educational empire. So we have ordinary people in these two writings. Aziz is an ordinary man. Similarly, Balram Halwai is an ordinary person. As they deal with Indian context, the caste situation is very clear. As this is a dhobi, Balram is a sweet maker, but these two caste affiliations do not give them any kind of livelihood. That is why they indulge in so many other ways of finding some livelihood. We have a developmental perspective on Aravind Adiga's novel The White Tiger from an article Can the Subaltern Right the Wrongs by Lena Kaur. I am sure you will find it interesting and collect it and read it. Let us discuss this article now. Lena Kaur discusses human rights. There are two central assumptions about human rights. One is having or claiming and dispensing human rights. The other is the strong might right the wrongs. There are also three additional assumptions when we deal with the concept of human rights. First, rights go with responsibilities. Second, the powerful people must protect the rights of the less powerful people. And the third is those who claim to protect the rights of less powerful people can also dominate them. That is what happens in many cases, and probably we have more ideas like this associated with human rights. The less powerful people can also claim and dispense human rights. That is what Balram Halwai does. They may right the wrongs. The main idea is righting of wrongs by the poor. That is what we have in the White Tiger. The class division between the rich and the poor. Balram Halwai notices it and he wants to right it. He wants to become a rich person by taking some money from his master. That is his primary motive, but he can't do that without killing the master. That is why he kills the master, takes the money and escapes from his area, that is Bihar and Delhi. Now there are some human rights problems which we connect with Balram's logic. The problem is the rich grow richer at the expense of the poor. That is the whole problem. If the rich become rich by their own efforts, no problem, but they become rich at the expense of the poor by keeping the poor people poorer and poorer. We have some logical assumptions behind Balram's thoughts and actions. Why does he behave the way in which he does? There are some explanations. Underdevelopment is the main cause of class inequality. Another reason is, if underdevelopment is the main cause of class inequality, modernization is a solution to underdevelopment and class inequality. That is why globalization has come to India, which is an unavoidable world order today. The argument of Balram goes like this. Balram's actions are the outcomes of underdevelopment, modernization and globalization. His actions are wrong and unethical from the general viewpoint, but his actions are right from the subaltern point of view. Subaltern is a person who belongs to the oppressed lower classes. Human rights violations, torture and death of Balram's family and illegal voting are also hinted at in the novel. Actually, the illegal voting is very much described, and the consequence of Balram killing his master would result in destruction of the entire family of Balram in Bihar, which he may not know about, but he is aware of it. What is underdevelopment? Developed countries, underdeveloped countries, the developing countries, all these concepts came into being during the colonial period. We have some reference here to one thinker called Sankaran Krishna. There are two kinds of underdevelopment which are discussed in the White Tiger. First, the rich underdevelop the poor. The rich are responsible for the poverty of the poor. That is one idea. Another idea is the poor underdevelop the poor. That means the poor themselves are responsible for their poverty. We have some examples of the rooster coop phenomenon, which explains both kinds of underdevelopment. The butcher and the roosters are the rich and the poor. Both the rich and the poor are aware of the profit from the lifeblood of the other, but they do not do anything to stop it. That is why a novelist like Aravind Adiga comes into picture. We also have psychological and economic underdevelopment, like Balram's owning the crime of Pinky Madam. Pinky Madam actually caused an accident. she should be held responsible for it, but in the place of Pinky, Balram is supposed to be sent to jail. It does not happen. We also have another idea, ethical responsibility to the Indian family, which is discussed in the novel Threadbare. What kind of impact does the Indian family have on individuals? We are basically a collective society, but now with globalization we have some sense of individuality of human beings. So when a person goes to a job, he is expected to send money home. If he does not send money, then the family does many things to somehow get the money from that individual. Now Balram cuts off his relationship from the family and becomes responsible for the destruction of the whole family. Modernization is considered to be a solution. We have some points here. Scientific and rational understanding of the world can help us. Balram therefore disregards religion and gods, but he pretends to be a religious person for practical purposes. Even Ram Prasad adopts the guise of a Hindu, though he is a Muslim, just for the sake of livelihood. There is also an element of pragmatism. Selfish actions for their own selfish development can help them. We have Balram cheating his master by false bills and free rides. He uses a car for free rides of people. Next, we have one impact of globalization. Now people are free from the medieval prejudice against profit and commerce. Earlier, when we earn more and more money, people will feel upset, they would feel guilty, but now people do not feel any kind of guilt when they make more and more profit, when they indulge in all kinds of corrupt commercial practices. The only motive is get money. Because of this phenomenon, Balram has that enterprising spirit to make more money. We have self-evaluation by achievements, not by birth or social status as used to happen earlier. Now one has to rise up by hard work and join the big belly group. Fierce competition is responsible for competing with each other and mostly exploiting each other. We have the next point here. There is a capacity for delayed gratification of the senses. Balram wants to wait. He does not want to get married as granny tells him or even forces him to do. He waits. He saves enough money for future growth by the present sacrifice, by postponing marriage. There are many Indians now, they are confused because of the influences of globalization. Balram is an example of this, various forces operating on individuals in our country, whether educated or uneducated, it does not matter. We are all affected by the forces of globalization in our country today. Aravind Adiga, as a responsible citizen, has given a picture of what is happening in the minds of people. We also have the phenomenon of neoliberal globalization, because modernization is not adequate to explain Balram's actions. Balram moves from feudalism to capitalism into a free market economy. What is this neoliberal globalization? It is a system that values people and interacts with them as goods and services. Today, everyone is looked at as a service or a goods or a labor, where free market is a god. So our gods have turned into economic terms. Neoliberalization permits stealing and killing for economic growth. There is no ethics at all. That is why Balram does not feel anything bad about his actions. It balances the imbalance of class apartheid. Individual over community, profits over people, man over nature, these are all the actions that are happening today. We have a quotation from Adiga's interview. He gives an insight into what is happening in our country. There are lots of self-made millionaires in India now, but remember that over 1 billion people live here, and for the majority of them who are denied decent health care, education or employment, getting to the top would take something like what Balram has done, that is killing his master and robbing his master. Let us see the human rights approach now. what does it do? It aims to solve the problem of global and local inequality. It also attempts to rectify global polarization of the rich and poor. It is actually indistinguishable from development. We have the famous economist Amartya Sen, who has thought of development as freedom to improve the civil, political, social, economic, cultural and environmental freedoms of people. In this context, Balram claims and dispenses human rights as he grows from a subaltern to an entrepreneur, but he violates human rights. The right to development does not include a right to kill and rob. He is aware of it, but the problem is whose ethics we are discussing. Is it the ethics of the rich people or that of the poor people? Balram's simple argument is, all I wanted was the chance to be a man. That concept he learns from his father. Therefore, the actions of Balram are valid and ethical, although the problematic nature of his actions can never be closed. The article is concluded like this: Balram's narrative is a narrative of development, human rights, globalization and all that in the novel. The novel presents an ideology of underdevelopment, modernization and neoliberal globalization. The novel uses the form of a memo, that is a letter, we know it is an email, and also it uses the form of a Bildungsroman, that is the growth of an individual. The novel implicates the readers of the one-third world, white humanitarian, Indian and Chinese. All the people are implicated in the process of our economic, cultural, political development today. What are the takeaways from this novel? Stop treating humans like animals. 16th century Volpone, remember, people were treated like animals. At that time Shakespeare also said the same thing, respect fellow beings. Conserve and respect nature is a clarion call today. Ensure inclusive development, it has become a mission in government projects. Provide a dignified way of life to all human beings. Reduce poverty to reduce crime, otherwise it is not easy to reduce crime. Educate both the rich and poor about individual dreams in a neoliberal economy. All have to be educated about the chances, the choices that they can make. Recognize liberalization, that it is not the only answer to all problems in India. Liberalization, privatization, globalization is considered to be a key to change India, but the writer says it is not the only solution to all problems in India. Provide basic facilities like education and health to all people. The people will automatically grow into better people. To give you a summary of our presentation on the further analysis of the white tiger, we looked at the objectives, we saw the thematic contrast, we looked into the formal analysis with reference to beast fable, we looked at the language of the novel and particularly the English dimension of the novel. We understood something about human relationships through the protagonist and his relationship with all other people who are mentioned in the novel. We also considered certain reflections on life. Most importantly, we had comparative perspectives of Jonson, Dickens, Wright, Karnad with Adiga's novel The White Tiger. We understood greed and lust are primary reasons. Exploitation is a major reason, but then we find that the poor people have a way to find their own feet in the world. We especially gave a developmental perspective on Adiga's The White Tiger using an article of Lena Kaur. Finally, we considered certain takeaways. These are the ideas of all religions. Treat people like you would treat yourself. All are equal. All are brothers and sisters. This is what Swami Vivekananda said. All are brothers and sisters. Let's consider the humanity in everybody and live a peaceful life of coexistence. Here are some references for you. In addition to Lena Core's article, you can also look at Rathi's article Justice, Subalternism and Literary Justice. The novel can never be free from the question of ethics. Many critics would continue to discuss this question of justice in the novel. So, you can read this article and understand more perspectives. This has been published recently in 2020. The novel was published in 2008. So, many years have passed by, many conceptions of justice have come into picture to throw light on the actions of Balram. Let us understand our human beings and learn to live with respect. Thank you.